Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome once again to Time Warp, the show where we take a wrestler from WWE's history and see how they would do somewhere else along the wrestling timeline. My name is Paul Laporte. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Mike Miner.
Hello, everybody.
And the wrestler we are going to be looking at today, this is actually one that this was brought up, I think, by Johnny Patches when we were driving home from the NXT show like 2 months ago.
I actually think I brought this up as well.
Did you? Okay, you might have.
Yeah, I mean, both of us probably brought it up at different times.
This is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I'm kind of holding under my belt. And I think
Hive mind.
Yeah, I think that this week is the right time to do that. The wrestler we're going to be looking at today is The Rock, Rocky Maivia, the most electrifying man, and blah blah blah. And the era we're going to be looking at is the 1970s. Woo. Which was basically his father's era.
I could see him dressed up in a leisure suit. Well, leisure suit is 80s or...
No, 70s.
70s?
Yeah, 70s leisure suits, yeah.
Some of the 80s. Yeah, I could see him dressed up in a leisure suit.
Maybe some of the 90s. I mean, there could be a guy walking around in a leisure suit today.
The original Disco Inferno.
Yes, exactly. So, the thing that makes this subject so interesting, and this time period so interesting, is, okay, so you have The Rock, somebody who is... obviously a very established star, one of the most well-known names in professional wrestling history, one of the vaulted big three up there with Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan.
You look at our Mount Rushmore of wrestling, you're probably going to see his portrait up
exactly.
there, according to a lot of people.
But we're putting him in a time period where there wasn't really any big names. I mean, there's Andre was there. You know, Hogan was getting his start
in his infancy, let's say.
So he doesn't really have...
Backlund was a big deal then.
Yeah,
so.
He doesn't really have too much in his way in terms of competition, but it's a question of the underlying issues that may or may not allow him to reach the same heights he did before. Exactly. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at somebody who clearly has all of the skills for the top level. Clearly, because he had it in his time and became not only the best of his generation, but one of the best ever. Does he get that same level of success in a time period in which African Americans were less accepted, where their racism was much more of a thing back then? It's not the 50s, granted, but it's still there, and are the people going to appreciate a young, charismatic black man healing them, and then cheer for him as a result and want to see him turn babyface?
So, do you think the good old days of the 50s wouldn't have embraced him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he would have done very well.
You know what was great back then? We didn't have any, nobody dependent on the government.
Make America great again, everybody. Let's make it like the 50s.
There was...
Jesus Christ.
Oh, racism.
Okay, so...
Delightful racism. Good God.
So, like I said, this one's going to be a little bit different, because like I said, this isn't like how he interacts with the people in his era, it's just how he is perceived. So
yeah, I mean, the guy, he was smooth as silk back in his 80s. I mean, even now when he gets in the ring, he still moves around pretty well. Yeah. It's just, he knows what he's doing.
That time period, too, did have the Wild Samoans there.
Exactly. So,
he is Samoan. So, is he seen as a black wrestler, or is he seen as a Samoan wrestler?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, which end of the spectrum would he go on? Or would they try to embrace him being, a mixed race wrestler?
I mean, honestly, no, that ain't happening. You think
that's not going to happen?
Not in the 70s, no.
I think if anything, he'll be the son of Rocky Johnson. But then again, Rocky Johnson's around that time period too. So do you think like some big blow up with the space time continuum would happen?
Yeah, that's the problem. Because Rocky Johnson is there, and we've dealt with family issues. I'd say he still has his relations to the Wild Samoans, but I don't see. We can't really relate him to Rocky Johnson. We can't.
They probably give him a different name, Michael McGillicuddy. I can't even say it. Wow,
Michael
McGillicuddy was, he wasn't Mr. Perfect's son. He was Michael McGillicuddy. I think it'd be the same kind of deal. Curtis Axel.
I honestly think he'd be better served to be a Samoan rather than an African American. Just for the simple fact of he has the connections. But then he's a Samoan and he comes in as a Samoan Savage.
Then again, his father or his grandfather wasn't really portrayed as a Samoan Savage.
He wasn't.
So
you're right.
It could go either way.
But he did have kind of like the dress and the kind of like the
regalia. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He had the ukulele. He had the tattoos.
I mean, really,
he was legitimate.
So I think even though it's I mean, they were around the same time, a little bit later, but I think his closest corollary in terms of the character would be Roddy Piper.
As far as speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically we have, if we're going to go with The Rock as a heel character, we have an African American proto Roddy Piper. And Roddy Piper was extremely successful and was the reason for a lot of the success of Hulk Hogan. At least that's what Piper would say, and I can agree with that too to a certain extent. Do we think that The Rock would be able to kind of
supersede,
hit the same notes?
Oh, well.
Not even supersede because he's before him.
Yeah.
So, or at least at the same time. It's before Piper. Piper was still just kind of running the territories at that time. He wasn't a huge name, if I remember correctly.
I can see it going one of two ways. The Rock would be given the opportunity to speak. He's not going to have the same personality as he would the last 20 years. That's for certain. But I think the guy's got enough charisma and enough intelligence to actually make something work.
Now, here's the interesting thing, though.
But it depends on the character, too. I mean...
Also, maybe we're not giving wrestling fans enough credit here, because the 1970s, professional wrestling was... Are you peeing in your coffee right now?
No. Oh, you had to...
Sorry, I just
come on, man! Can't a guy just whip it out and just stick it in his cup?
I
was trying to keep the straw.
I was adjusting the
straw, so I'm trying not to let the noise hit the microphone.
Okay. Well, I guess I screwed that up.
I was just being thoughtful here.
And... Okay. So maybe we're not giving the wrestling fans of the 70s enough credit, because professional wrestling, you can argue in terms of how popular it was compared to the 80s, the 90s, and even up to today, but it was more. I guess it wasn't just seen as this thing that only like dumb people or bumpkins or rednecks or whatever enjoyed. It was kind of more universally appreciated and more accepted in kind of pop culture. It wasn't seen as this dumbed down thing. So maybe we're not giving the audience enough credit. Maybe they would appreciate somebody who just has that ability regardless of his race.
It was more of a sport.
Right, so, it was still seen then as legitimate sport more. So
kayfabe was,
wasn't it wasn't in full effect, but it was still there for the most part.
Let's just say if there was a scale for kayfabe, it'd be at a 9.5 out of 10.
That's probably
it was
fair
very.
assumption.
It was very.
That's fair.
Still very interesting. You think this is fake? It's not fake. It's real. And pluck an eyeball out of a guy.
Yeah, people were much more inclined to believe that this stuff was real than they were even a decade later, let alone today. Obviously, I think if he starts in, the NWA or World Class or the lower territories, he's probably a different guy than if he starts in the Northeast Territory. And traditionally, Time Warp is about staying within WWE unless we make the exception otherwise. So technically, he would be starting. He'd be in the. Would it still be the WWF at that point
in the 70s?
Yes. So he would be in the Northeast Territory, and so he's running. So he's in an area where immigration is very high. The immigrant population is high. Although at that time it tended to be more. Caucasian immigrants, Italians.
I was going to say Italians. Bruno Sammartino being
exactly.
The primary.
But I think he has a decent chance to make it in that market and connect with African Americans.
I could see if it were out west, around California, and that area, he'd be a huge hit because Samoans, as far as I know, they tend to travel to California, around that area. Samoa Joe, if I'm not mistaken, he's from California, isn't he?
Yeah, but I don't know if there's enough of I
don't know.
It wasn't exactly. We're not talking the Japanese into Hawaii.
No, I know. It's just one of those things where if you have enough of a following, but then again, you have the African American population around the country. He could be a huge draw and hero for them.
Right, exactly.
Much like his father and Tony Atlas were.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if he were a standalone star, he could definitely become
that's
the big draw. And that's the versatility of The Rock. Is he can garner.
But that's also the question. Is Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, great tag team?
Yeah.
had singles careers of their own, but neither of them really had a chance to make a run with a world title. Does The Rock get to that level, or does he get held back?
It depends. He could stand up on his own, but it seems like those guys weren't. I don't know if you could say given the chance, or if did they have the charisma enough to shine through?
I mean,
was Tony Atlas one of those guys that was just a big hulking guy, and that's all he had? It's.
I mean, when did WWF have their first African American world champion? Like, who was it?
Their first African American world champion. If we had to say anything, first Intercontinental champion was Ahmed Johnson.
Christ, was it The Rock? Was The Rock the first one?
It was The Rock.
I don't know.
It was The Rock.
We should double check that.
No, it is The Rock. I guarantee it was
the first
The Rock.
African American WWE champion.
I can 100% guarantee it. I mean, if you want to investigate,
I'll double check it.
Just double check that quick
because I'm curious.
But if anything,
because that seems like. That's terrible.
That's an awful long time.
And it's funny because
they've had guys
the
like
Atlanta-based territories of World Championship Wrestling and whatnot gave it to Ron Simmons first.
Yeah.
So, like, you would think that it would be the other way around, but no. Like the Southern Territories were willing to give an African-American man a world title before 20 years almost before the Northern Territories.
Which is weird, and I don't know. It was Ron Simmons was 92, 93. The Rock came along 98, November 98. So there's a good 5-6 year difference between, the South and WCW and the North and WWF as far as African American world champs. And, it's one of those things where you could say, well, it's the guy's ability and his charisma, and it depended on who he was and how he could draw a crowd, but how far can you take that before you go and say it's politics? I mean, look at a guy like Junkyard Dog.
Right.
Back in the 80s. He had tremendous drawing power. He was never given a shot. But then again,
and that's the problem. Yeah, I looked and I couldn't the one article I found. Yeah, I think that the Rock is the first, and I mean if you're considering not secondary titles or not the World Championship, he's the only. And there are some people who don't even consider him because he's mixed race,
and that's
which is bull. I don't know. I think that's kind
garbage.
of bullshit. That's bullshit.
Because the guy his father's black, dude. I mean,
I know. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even going to say African American. People go, "Oh, black African." The guy's black.
Yeah. How many black athletes in the WWE are 100% African as it is? So the Rock is the first and really only one. Which holy shit, that's like a whole other topic for a whole other show. Can he basically break through that barrier and get there in the 70s? God.
See, that's the thing. Such a tough one.
This is fucking hard. I don't know. Because it feels like he could.
You know what? Let's be fair, though. Back about 10 or so years ago, the World Heavyweight Championship was a very strong championship belt. There was a time where it complemented the WWE Championship.
See, Booker
T was champion. I mean, I can't even get to the part where it's later on with that championship where it was looked at kind of like a,
Yeah, but it was always secondary.
Triple H was holding on to that belt for ages. I don't know if
John
it was secondary
held the
U.S.
title.
I mean, it's a different kind of it's a different thing. I mean, two shows had their main championship belts.
I guess, yeah, but I mean, really, there's only been one time an African American, has stood at the top of the mountain on his own, and that was
the WWE with the WWE banner. I get that.
The thing, see, here's the thing.
Booker T, Mark Henry.
Here's the problem rough. Is that if WWE was if there was ever a period where WWF, WWF was just like there were stories like they're blatantly racist, like it is clear cut, like this would be an easier question to answer. But the thing is that WWE and Vince McMahon, it's just like there's never been a smoking gun to say that they're a racist, but you look back at their history and you say, like, why hasn't there been any / more African American champions? It just, like, I don't know. So it's a thing of like,
you know
was it just a matter of convenience? If so, or was it just a matter of literally the right guy just didn't come along and didn't happen to be African American until The Rock? If that's the case, then The Rock gets the title in the 70s. But if it's not, then I don't know. I don't think so. I have no idea.
To be fair, around the 70s and 80s, it was a much different time than it is today.
I know, but that's the thing, is like, there's no examples of it being a different time in WWE. It's just like, it's just this big fucking mystery as to why nobody managed to get it and be African American at the time.
Like I said, Bruno Sammartino was the guy in the 60s and much of the 70s. Then you had Jesse Ventura with, 9 months?
Yeah.
As a heel, which is a big deal back then.
Right.
Bob Backlund was champion for a long time. They get like the amateur guy that's, the fresh baby face and everything. Then you got Hogan in the 80s, the Iron Sheik in between. So it was basically like they're trying to get these guys as top-level draws. And
yeah, so let me ask.
I don't know if there was... and it sounds crappy, but like maybe a guy that happened to be African-American back then wasn't as charismatic as these... See,
that was the question I'm going to ask you.
That's the thing.
This is, we're going off the path a little bit, but... So, those guys, Tony Atlas, Rocky Johnson, Bad News Allen,
Junkyard Dog.
He's
the 80s,
yeah, okay, but so we
still.
Time War blurs the lines a little bit. Did these guys just not have what it takes to have that charisma to be a world champion, or were they not given a chance to show that they did have what it takes?
They were very athletic.
But I don't know if we can say that they weren't charismatic, because I just don't know if they were ever given that opportunity.
Yeah, you know what? Tony Atlas was a big, strong guy.
But I'm saying, like, if we never gave them the chance to be that hero, how do we know that they couldn't do it?
I swear I heard something about Tony Atlas probably being given a shot, but he had issues with drugs back in the day, but I'm not
positive. Right, yeah, I know that's. But then again, so did everybody. That's another thing. Like, everybody was doing drugs.
I guess this was more pronounced. I guess, but I don't know.
But that's the thing. Was it?
But yeah,
was it more pronounced?
Come on, it was the 70s.
No, but I'm saying that was he doing more fucking coke than everybody else, basically, or was that just an excuse
snorting coke fuck
to keep a black guy who was starting to get some momentum out of that title picture? That's the hair-pullingly frustrating thing with the World Wrestling Federation and World Wrestling Entertainment, is like, it doesn't seem like there's any barriers in place, but why the fuck isn't anybody getting there?
I don't know, man. We could go, like, I want to go to the 80s for a second. Junkyard Dog, like I mentioned before, that guy was tremendously over in Mid-South. He was over big time in the WWF. He's one of their top names around that time. He was,
but never got the title,
especially as an African American hero, and the kids loved him. And yeah, that's the thing, though. Like, but you know what? There was 3 championships at that time: Tag Team Championship, Intercontinental Championship, WWF Championship. Like, those were the 3 belts. I mean, unless you can envision him being the women's champion. Did
he ever get the Intercontinental belt?
No, he didn't.
So he never even fucking held the title, and he was one of the company's biggest, like, most popular guys.
That's the mind-blowing part about it all.
That's the weirdest thing. Yeah, it's like, why? What's the reasoning for it? I just don't.
Perhaps he didn't need a championship belt, but
nobody needs a championship belt. But Does fucking Hulk Hogan need a championship belt for 5 years?
That's around that time where holding on to that championship made you money.
No, that's what I'm saying.
How they gauge the guy. We're going to give you the championship. We're going to see how you draw. We're going to give you the money based on how.
I can't shake this feeling like they were just held back, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally. Whether it was just WWE just never thinking that they could have done it, just for whatever reason. Like, even if it wasn't like a blatant thing of anybody saying, we can't let this guy be a world champion, he's black. Was it just like a thing of like, it just never entered their minds, and that's, in a way, that's worse.
Maybe their market was a bit different back then, and they didn't want to, maybe it was primarily white. I mean, you look at the audiences during that time, did you see many African American audience members?
Not in the North, but in the South you did.
Even
more.
Then, it's just weird, because why should that matter if
the guy
it doesn't matter if you're booking a black champion transcends. That's just
blurs the lines. That's showing racism.
I mean, look at like I said, the Junkyard Dog used to bring the kids in the ring, dance with them. That guy was amazing, very charismatic, great finish. The thump. I mean, he was the headbutts on the ground. He would the guy was charismatic. He was awesome.
Exactly. So, but at the same time,
like I said,
he was a black man playing essentially an animal. So, I mean, no, but I'm saying that's like the thing is like you had to be like a savage.
Was he not?
You had to be like a?
Was he not taken seriously because of that? Like a Hulk Hogan?
I mean, he never got the belt.
Yeah,
I don't think it's unreasonable to say that he wasn't taken seriously because he never was given a fucking title.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, look at Hogan, the big smasher. The big Hulk. For God's sake, Marvel had their lawsuit in place against him. They wanted to sue WWF because
of the name,
the Hulk. Yeah, and I can see that. The guy was big and popular, strong, and somebody that everybody wanted to get behind. Yeah, but it's very, very strange. And like The Rock, we went off the subject a little bit with Junkyard Dog.
We did go way off the rails,
we have got
this is an important discussion to have. Like this ties into this.
You know what? I'm going to say it right now. We got to do a show on the Junkyard Dog in the future, not too far future, too. Because
we can do a Time Warp on JOD.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we'll switch places with him and The Rock.
Let's
as far as The Rock goes, if he exhibits the level of charisma back then, breaks through like he did 20 years ago up until today.
So you think he would have the opportunity to break through?
He would have the opportunity as long as he showcased that charisma. Hogan was one of those guys in the 80s that he went and gave all these fiery promos. And he was on fire with them. And he just could captivate a crowd. I can tell you something, brother. Prayers, vitamins, blah, blah, blah.
All right.
But you know what? In the 70s, it was a bit different. Bruno Sammartino was very calm, collected.
Yeah.
So
let's.
Then you got. Let me just finish up for a second. All
right, fine.
But you had. I just mentioned him too. Billy Graham. I might have said Jesse Ventura earlier. It might have been Billy Graham I was talking about. But anyway, there's a guy that held the championship for 9 months. Shot his mouth off. Showed how great he was, from a talker standpoint. And The Rock had that. I could have worked with him. As far as that goes. Was he as athletic as Bob Backlund? No, but he was very smooth in the ring and could move around. So I think he has a shot, as long as the powers that be let him get a shot, and he draws.
Okay, so that's the follow-up question is, do you think he has the same level of success that he did?
No, absolutely not. Different time back then. I think they were very gun-shy about pushing a guy like him at that time. The closest I'd say is about near the mid-'80s is the Iron Sheik from the Middle East.
Okay.
And that's as close as I can get with it. But
maybe like a
strange
transition. I don't even think he does that. I think he's one of those guys who he makes it into the Hall of Fame as a pioneering African American wrestler. Yeah. He has that reputation, but in terms of I don't think he ever wins the world title. Even because you figure if he starts in the 70s, his career is going to peak in the 80s and then start to come down the other side in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets the world title. I don't think I don't even know if he gets an IC title. Maybe he gets an IC title.
I was going to say, generously, I think he would get an IC title run.
Yeah. So
probably against Greg Ventura or Greg. Wow, I'm mixing up my names today big time. Greg Valentine.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the frustrating thing about the WWF and WWE is that it doesn't seem like there's anything blatantly in place, but there's no other explanation for why guys didn't get there.
Yeah, I just think a lot of it has to do with, perceptions at the time and lengthy title runs and lack of titles to hold on to and probably a different audience they were aiming toward. So it's strange. Very strange. I mean, you had Tony Atlas and The Rock's father holding on to the tag team championship, and maybe that was what they thought of as a consolation prize, because at least back in that day, holding on to a championship like that meant a lot more than it does today.
Yeah.
So maybe that was them saying, look at these guys, and they're the World Tag Team Champions, just like we have the World Champion. So, I mean, that was probably... I mean, think about it. That had to be the equivalent of... it's going to sound weird. I can't phrase it any better, but you have the Singles Championship, you have the Tag Championship, both world titles, and maybe that was her consolation, I guess.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Time Warp. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please be sure to check out our website, www.changingtheqs.com. That's changingtheqs.com. Also be sure to check out all of our other shows, which you can check out either at our website or at our YouTube page, or you can subscribe to on iTunes. On Mondays, we have this show, Time Warp. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have Changing the Questions. Wednesdays, we have Booking About a Wrestler. And on Fridays, we have Let's Play TEW. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so. Same thing, at Changing the Qs, which is at Changing the QS. Also, be sure to like us on Facebook. Just search for Changing the Questions there. If you want to send us a good old-fashioned email, you can do that at changingthequestions@gmail.com. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. For Mike Miner.
Well... give us your thoughts and opinions, guys, and correct me on any names that I might have mixed up. So, thank you for listening.
My name is Paul Laporte. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.